Welcome to the Spirit Woke Podcast, podcasting from the beautiful city of Stillwater, the birthplace of Minnesota. Are you going through a spiritual awakening? Do you wish to learn more about continued spiritual growth and want to meet others who are on a similar journey? We hope that this podcast and its community can be a meaningful resource for you. The Spirit Woke Podcast welcomes special guests from around the globe who share personal stories of their awakening journey, along with details of spiritual abilities they've developed along the way. So buckle up and get ready for this exciting episode. And now, here's your host, Adam Dins.
Friends, welcome back to the Spirit Woke Podcast. I am so excited to have Ellen Red back on the show for our third time in our third out of our four-part series. So today, Ellen's going to be talking to us about a topic that is absolutely fascinating to me, and I know it is for many of you listening in, and that's the topic of Ascension. So Ellen, welcome back to the Spirit Woke Podcast.
Thank you.
So it is, again, an honor to have you join us again. I can't thank you enough for all the time that you've spent with us so far and just the enlightenment that you've given us, in our previous podcasts.
Well, it's been my pleasure, I assure you.
Yeah, so we'll spread that pleasure out equally here. So much pleasure to go around.
Yes, it's wonderful. It's my favorite stuff to talk about. So
that's awesome, and it's evident. Ours too, mine too. It's there's nothing more fun than to talk about spirituality. So we'll continue that today. So Ellen, thus far on our podcasts, we've talked about a couple of different things. We started out talking about your spiritual awakening story, which folks, if you haven't listened to that, go back to spiritwoke.com. And it's there. Go find it. It's a beautiful story of awakening. And so I highly recommend that. And then on our podcast after that, we talked about out-of-body experiences and on astral projection and spirits, which was a really cool, mind-blowing conversation. And today we're talking about Ascension. And, some of you may know what that is, some may not. So let's just level the playing field here. Ellen, would you explain to our audience what Ascension means to you?
Ascension basically is returning to love. It's returning to your original soul self and to oneness, meaning that we're all one. And as we go through this earth life and the spiritual training here on earth, we cut ourselves off from source as an experiment to find our way back to love again. And so Ascension is where we are remembering our soul selves and returning back to our true soul essence and oneness with all that is. God, people call it God, call it whatever you want, but oneness and returning to our soul selves and our original birthplace.
Yeah, that's really cool. I heard, and I'd love to get your opinion on this. Sort of the reason why we go through this earthly existence many times is when we're, for lack of a better term, on the other side. Everything just it's perfect. We experience love, we experience joy, we experience all of those things, but because that's all we've experienced, we don't really know what it truly feels like. We don't fully truly embrace it. So we come here in these lifetimes, in a sense, to we kind of wipe ourselves clean of that experience of what that feels like. And we live this life, and that way when we return back to, again, the flip side, the other side, whatever, we have a better understanding of what that love truly is.
Yeah, we have a better appreciation for it. So it's the duality experience, basically, and you're right about that. It is we can't appreciate love or light when we don't know what it feels like to suffer and to struggle and to be exposed to hate and those kinds of things. So you're right. We came here to experience that complete cutoff, and then to return back. And I guess there's a lot there. There's a lot to say about it. We did come to experience that, but we also got caught in karmic cycles that we haven't been able to break through until we started to receive divine intervention recently. So that's another whole topic that's it more, I think. I don't know if you want to go into that now or not, but yes, that's pretty much sums it up, is that we come here and we get cut off, and then at some point along the way, hopefully we will develop in our soul and choose love and return on our way back to it.
So, well, we don't have to go fully into the karmic cycle, but let me ask you this question. So when we get caught in this karmic cycle, do we know before we come back? You know, because there are life plans and soul plans, and you know, we think about what we want to happen in this lifetime and the lessons to experience. But do we know when we come back that there's a risk of this karmic cycle, or is it just something that, oops, you know, didn't realize that was there, but I guess we're going through it, kind of thing?
Well, in my awareness, of course, in our highest aspect of our soul self, we're aware of all of that, because we're kind of creating it and guiding ourselves through it from a much higher perspective. However, I will say that I understand that there are negative attachments, or as we talked about in the last session, the demonic attachments type of thing that can hold us in karmic cycles. So say, for example, that you've been and this is a real extreme situation here, but let's say that you were a person who was a pedophile, and you never reached a place where you realized that or recognized in your soul that this was wrong. Your conscience you didn't hear your conscience explaining to you that it's wrong, and you didn't act and change it, then you are going to be reincarnated again in a hell cycle pretty much until you stop doing that. And as I understand also that some souls, if they don't ever change or choose love, they can lose the opportunity to have a physical incarnation and still be in a you know, like what we would call purgatory and religious type texts. But it's the same thing. You would be in a fourth dimensional state without a physical body and without being able to transcend and go into higher dimensions. So to some degree, yes, you're choosing it on a high soul level, and to another degree, you're also being what we would call possessed. And that can cause karmic cycles to happen repetitively, really against your against your own will. You, in the end of all things, you, the individual soul, has to make the choice to choose to go towards love, as opposed to just unconsciously creating the other kind of a life. You have to become conscious, basically, about everything that you're choosing to do, and that consciousness has to be you serve love or you don't.
And that's where the awakening comes in. Is that the purpose of the awakening? Is that you begin to come back to that love? And let me ask a second part of that question: is it possible for people to not awaken per se, but still return to love and move towards that?
Yeah, it's possible for them to be already on the journey towards love, because it's something in our soul that we're, you know, it's kind of like you can unconsciously be choosing love. Yes, you can. Okay. And I think a lot of people do. I think that there's a lot of people out there that are genuinely good in the heart. They just haven't consciously, you know, remembered their soul self or anything like that. But in their hearts, they know what's right and wrong, and they're just living their lives with that in mind, because it's just their true nature. It's all of our true nature, really. But some souls get really on the other side of that, you know.
Yeah. So, Ellen, what's the difference between then a spiritual awakening and ascension?
That's a good question. I would say that an awakening itself really is kind of like this aha moment. It's like all of a sudden for me, I can only speak from my experience. For me, it was like all of a sudden I had a full memory, conscious memory of my true soul essence in this physical world. I could see the souls in trees. I can see the people driving down the street and see the wounds lodged in their auras. I could move through energy. I could freeze time like in the movie The Matrix. I mean, all of a sudden, all these other gifts just boom, kind of a big bang moment, if you want to call it that. Whereas Ascension is the journeying of going back home. So after the awakening, then you kind of continue to head towards your ascension to return back to love. So I guess an awakening would be a big bang thing, and the ascension process itself is a journey. We're always journeying on our way back.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. And so, when we talk about spiritual awakening, then, is it in the context of ascension? I think they kind of go hand in hand, right? Because the spiritual awakenings, that takeoff point, if you will, and the ascension then is the journey. Some people don't have, as powerful of a spiritual awakening experience as you have. Some people just start to become more aware of the ego and start to separate themselves from that ego, and are able to really kind of, through meditation, let's just say, get closer to their soul self and who they truly are. And other people have this incredible, mystical experience like you had. And it's incredible, the varying levels of degrees of that spiritual awakening, like it's just so fascinating to hear all the different and learn about the different various
right
stages.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I will say too that before my big bang, I also did have other, just slower progress towards that big bang moment too. So, however it happens, I don't think really matters. And I do agree with you that not everybody gets the high voltage experiences, and I don't know why. I don't believe that everybody gets some of the high voltage type stuff, but maybe you don't need it. I don't know. For each soul is different, and I don't think it really matters. The only thing that really matters is that you are conscious about your soul and conscious about continuing to evolve in your own being, and that's all that really matters.
Yeah, that's awesome. So with Ascension, I've heard people talk about there being many levels to Ascension, and the way I hear you talk about it, it's not so much levels; it's more of just the path.
Yeah, I would totally agree with them when they say that there's levels. I like to describe it to people like playing a video game. You can't get to level 3 in Mario Brothers until you pass level 1 and pass level 2. So I 100% agree that it is levels of evolution. And until you are overcome one, the other, you're not initiated to the next stage.
So, like, what are the levels different for everybody, or is there is it just kind of like like a ladder, and everyone climbs the same steps?
Well, I think that for the most part that it's pretty much the same, although some of us have some of our own unique personal life experiences that we have to overcome or transmute the energy from, certain types of experience in this lifetime, and past lifetimes as well. But for the most part, it's all about the 12 sacraments, meaning that there are certain characteristics and qualities that have to be developed within each soul in order for them to become godlike. And that's really what this is about, is becoming the best version of yourself. And so those characteristics have to be developed, and the qualities are all the same. For example, chastity, integrity, honor, truth. You know what I'm saying? So we as individual souls we get put through, various situations in life to develop these characteristics, but it's really about developing the characteristics, not about your specific circumstances so much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when you think about those different steps and you think about those different elements that you mentioned, is it like You think about honesty or integrity as a step or a pillar, if you will. Does that like, what does that mean? Because I feel like some people might feel like honesty and integrity mean one thing compared to another person who may have a different uh, interpretation of that. Like, what are your thoughts on that, Ellen?
Well, I guess everybody is, I guess to some degree, perception is everything. So to some degree, there's truth that everybody might perceive things a little bit differently. However, uh, you know, I would say that it starts within the self. So being honest with yourself, because if you can't be honest with yourself, you can't be honest with anybody else. And trust me when I tell you that this isn't easy for me or for anybody. That it's sometimes hard to look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, I'm full of shit today. And I shouldn't have said that because that wasn't really true. That was just, but again, it's ego-based stuff. And so your level of honesty with yourself is what is required in order for you to ascend. Because without you being true to you, you can't be true to anybody else anyway. So how you interpret it is really probably between you and you. But that's where it starts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And so in saying that, is it sort of like a perfection or a mastery of those specific traits, or is it more of like an awareness of those traits?
It's definitely a mastery of those traits. That's why it's called the Master's Program. And that's what Ascended Masters really are, is they are beings who really work out all of the bugs in their own soul so that they are not violating love. Because if you are not honest with yourself, you are not honest with other people. And if you're not honest, then what are you?
Yeah.
You're dishonest, and therefore you're violating love, because an honest person doesn't be dishonest to somebody else or to themselves. You see what I'm saying? So again, it's all about love, and to get to those higher realms, you can't get there when your heart is bogged down with gooey daggers of poison. You have to get that poison out of your heart and out of your mind and out of your being. And that poison means anything that violates love and the soul and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And so, no, you don't have to be a perfect person, but you do have to work out these bugs within yourself so that you live a life every day of integrity and honor and chastity and truth and whatever, all of the qualities of love are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, does everybody know what those are? No, a lot of people have forgotten what the real rules of love are. I call them rules. I have a page called Venus Rules, and also my YouTube page, Venus Rules, and it means like the rules of love and the universal laws. But I think a lot of people have forgotten them, and they've misinterpreted it. And there's no two words more misinterpreted and misunderstood than God and love, and both are the same thing. And they are the most highly misinterpreted terms in the universe, really, especially on Earth.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, holy moly, that's a lot. So how did you learn about these different levels and these different steps?
Well, that's a really complex question to answer, because I think that for all of us on our own individual journeys, we're always learning, because we're already in training programs. So, being violated as a small child started to teach me how bad it felt, so that I could understand and appreciate how good it is not to be violated, and so on and so forth. And being, lied to taught me that it's not good to lie because it doesn't feel good, or cheating, or these type of characteristics. So I experienced it all in my own life. And then as far as once I had my awakening, going through other higher levels of ascension and having my DNA activated and my light body activated, and that type of ascension stuff came after the awakening. So first I had to learn the rules of love, and that's what led me to my awakening. And once I stood and committed to serve and surrender myself to serve in the ways of love every day, then I had an awakening, and then I got initiated into higher levels of ascension, like I was saying, with light body activations and remembering to understand light language, and then of course getting initiated into layer upon layer of evolution in my own soul, from overcoming addictions to stepping into soul purpose and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that just for each soul, you don't have to try to figure out like, what step do I have to take? It's not going to come to you like some handbook. It's going to come to you sporadically through your own soul, based on your own soul's mission and your own soul's guidance. So don't get yourself too wrapped around the mentality of how's it going to happen and what are the rule books. It just won't work that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
That's definitely a third dimensional construct to try to wrap your brain around it. You just have to follow your own soul's guidance. However, some of the lessons will definitely be the same for every soul. Like it's not, they don't sell cigarettes and beer in heaven. So, or you know what I'm saying, in the fifth dimension. So you're gonna at some point have to overcome those things in your being. You can't get free. If you'll become an earthbound soul if you continue to do addictive things and things that are attached to the earthly ways. And so you will have to wash that all out of your spirit before you can ascend to higher dimensions.
Yeah, that's powerful. And not all that happens, say, in one lifetime, right? Like we live through multiple lifetimes, and sometimes it's we learn slowly, and then in some lifetimes, like you've had, things kind of speed up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I banged my head around on that stuff for who knows how many lifetimes. But this lifetime, the soul has said, nope, you're not doing that. You're on the fast track. And I think a lot of us in this lifetime are being pushed into the fast track because we are literally living in the days of revelations right now, right here today. You and I are participating in that book of Revelations, meaning that it's time now. The days of enlightenment are upon us, and those that are choosing love and light are going in that direction, and those that are not, I really wouldn't want to be one of them because I just wouldn't want to be. So I think that my soul's had about enough of it, and for whatever reason that I think that we already pre-agree that we're going to have our awakening when we do. And that's why all those synchronicities with the numbers and everything start happening for people, is when they start to become where they're recognizing them. Those codes, those numerical codes, are written into our soul also. So like when we start to recognize those numbers and sequences, it's like a reminder. Remember, this was going to happen, boom, 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 and it clicks into your subconscious so you can start to have your awakening.
Oh wow! So it's so like when we see 1111 or any of those numbers, that's what you're referring to. It sort of unlocks something in our subconscious that's already there, that's been there and been waiting to be unlocked when we recognize what that is.
Correct. It's like a numerical code that's in your DNA that once you start to become aware of it and recognize it, and you start to pay attention to those synchronicities, that's your sign. That was your signal. Okay, yep, it's time. And not everybody's doing that. If you notice, like you might be in some spiritual groups and everybody's like, oh, numbers, and we're all talking about it now, but the reality is not everybody's really even paying attention, and most people don't get what it even means and haven't had that awakening yet. But for the ones that were agreed or had an agreement to have that awakening at whatever time, it was already pre-written for you to do that. So again, it all comes back to paying attention to your own soul and following your own soul's guidance, and try not to get too caught up in who and what's doing whatever, but follow your own soul.
Yeah,
it knows the way home.
Yeah absolutely. That's very, very deep stuff, Ellen. Lots of stuff for us all to process here. So, so let me ask you this question. So, so when we were talking about like, 1111 or these other numbers, is that what ascension codes refer to?
Well, not necessarily. That was numerical codes that is basically going to trigger a memory in your DNA, whereas ascension codes. Let me think of the best way to describe that. I think ascension codes to some degree is more like somebody's talking to you about, like, say for example, you and I were talking about you having an out of body experience and you weren't really quite having it and you were frustrated with it, and then after we talked about it and we talked about some certain things and then you actually had one, is partially because you had some ascension codes downloaded into you through that communication, like the code, the conversation, the everything, it got sunk into your subconscious, and then it allowed your spirit to work through it until it actually happened for you. That would be more in my understanding of what an ascension code really is.
Got it. Okay, so it's sort of like a download.
Correct.
Okay. Of course, me being a Googler by nature, and when I Google ascension codes, I came across like a ton of videos on YouTube, guided meditations that, that promise to activate codes and grid lines and all that good stuff. Is that a way, if people are looking to achieve those things or to receive those codes, are those legitimate ways of doing so?
100 million percent. Because the soul, again, the soul itself, it really doesn't operate off of language, meaning that we don't use a physical verbal language. We use telepathy, we use vibration, color, sound. And so those are 1,000,000% a good way to activate your DNA. It also helps to calm the chaos of the soul, because we've had a lot of manipulations to our food, our water, our air, or even our radio waves, and with the technology and things like that. And even the radio stations that we listen to and the television programs that we listen to have vibration to them that can set your spirit out of whack. And so when you listen to some of those sound frequencies and those healings, and even verbal language, conversation that is giving you download of information that maybe you didn't have before, it can activate your DNA, and it can help to bring you into balance and out of that chaos state in your soul. So very powerful stuff.
Yeah, that is really powerful, because I'm imagining if I'm listening to this podcast and and I'm thinking, wow, I really want to kind of move down the road in terms of ascension, or move up the road, if you will. I want to find a resource, someone to help me kind of activate these codes.
Well, that's what I do as a DNA activator, and there are several other ones also that do, and there are videos out there, and there are those that will, some of them are doing like light language translations, where they're talking the light language to you through videos, or even through movement, mantras or whatever, with the hand movement, and all of that stuff can activate your DNA, and it depending on how open the soul is or how ready they are for it. So even the conversations that you and I are having, for you or for any of you, the audience that's listening, can be receiving downloads, because if it wasn't information that they already knew, then it's a reminder in their soul, and it lodges into the subconscious so that they can process it to have soul remembrance of its truth. And so that's it can happen through language, or it can happen any of the other ways, but it's all important. And you're already on that ascension journey, or you wouldn't be doing the work you're doing, and you wouldn't be, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So of course you're already on, and anybody listening to this program or this show is also on their way as well, because really we're all ascending. And again, not every soul's going to be choosing, the love path in this incarnation, but whole and globally, we are ascension path, and so many souls are seeking and searching and trying to get more information and understanding, and this show itself is going to be assisting them. So it's very good. You can do it in many forms, and I guess whatever works for each soul. But I mean, there's a lot of good information. There's been a lot of light workers that have been already building that grid for many years, decades, and longer. Like, for example, my twin and I think we talked about twin flames, and we can do more of that another time. But my twin flame and I, like, that's what the twin flame journey is about, is to come into wholeness with that aspect of yourself so that you can anchor that core unconditional love into the core of the earth. And we've been doing grid work that way for a long time, meaning that we have been laying the ley lines and healing the ley lines of the earth through the light workers that are around the globe. So we chose that as, that we were going to come to earth at a certain time, and that we were going to be in a certain location on earth based on our ancestral history. And each one of us is located all around the globe so that we can help to anchor in that unconditional love to assist the whole earth herself to ascend into higher dimensions. And so that groundwork's already been laid out. And now there are many more people on the second wave of awakening, which just happened in 2018 and 2019. A large group of souls also just started to have an awakening, and they're what we call the second wave. And so the first wavers came in and created this ley lines and groundwork, and we awakened back in 2008 and 2011. So I say both because I had like a minor awakening in 2008, and then I had a massive full-blown crown chakra opening in 2011. And then those souls, that 2011 was kind of what the first wavers were, and a large amount of us around the globe started to do a lot of light work and created the foundations for, media and Facebook and YouTube and channels and things like that. So there's a lot of work that's already been done. So the second time coming through is really doing a sweep to where we can have a massive awakening globally.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think I was part of that second wave. My that awakening journey for me started, I think, in January of 2018, and kind of,
okay.
Yeah, kind of blew into full-fledged
Awesome.
Awakening. Well, I shouldn't say full-fledged, because it seems like every time I say that, something else happens, and it's like, okay, now it's moving really, really fast. But yeah, like the first like big crack, I think, happened just last November. So
good. So you are a second waiver. Okay, that's good then. So basically, I think, if I understand right, that the second waivers have a kind of a different mission. I'm not sure, but of course the mission's the same for everybody. We're all working together towards the global ascension, and really what that means is to return the earth to her state of utopia, right?
yeah.
Because we were originally given a utopian planet that was self-sustaining, that provided resources for all beings, and there was no need for war or suffering or murder or rape or anything. And we destroyed that because of greed and because of lust and all of that other stuff. And so as we are coming back into our soul selves, we have to cleanse ourselves from those kinds of behaviors, because they're not true to our nature on a soul level. And we've not only harmed our own souls and each other's souls, but we've harmed the planet, and also the universe itself is affected by all that we do. So we're now realizing that we've got work to do to clean up and to return to our true soul state.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, because I know for a fact there are quite a few people just that I know that are listening to this podcast that have awakened in the last 2 years or so. So just like, what do you understand about that difference between the first and second waivers? What are, like, in terms of like having a different purpose, not a different purpose, but just the nuance there?
I don't know. All I can tell you is that as a first waver, and I'm going to cry my eyes out here for a minute, but no,
Please do.
but but as a first waver, I think that we've, for the most part, we were kind of a little bit more behind the scenes. Most of us were and have been, partially due to the fact that we had to pioneer the trail through a lot of things, meaning that we were coming out of the closet on a soul level for the first time in massive amounts of numbers without a lot of resources. So 10 years ago, if you went on to YouTube to look for information about twin flames or about Ascension, there was really very little information out there. And so we kind of had to pioneer through our own souls and through our own navigation, not really having a community or anything like that. And then as we started to pioneer, and that's what I'm talking about with laying those grid lines and the ley lines and the grid work that we did, is that we in our own selves had to navigate without a lot of resource of where to go to get information. And then we had to start finding the few that knew it and start connecting with them and collaborating to create more information, where today and in the last few years, there's been a lot of information that we've had put out, a lot of different light workers and twin flames and things that started this work that have put it out there, so that when you guys as second waivers come in, you have the information more easily accessible. But if just in your and my experience together with each other, I think explains a lot about the difference between first and second waivers. Now I'm kind of tired, and I've kind of gone through a lot of stuff that has gone on in the last 10 years, and here you are all fresh and ready to go, but you have the technology and the this and that, so you can help me to come out too. So maybe we're hand in hand in the same work. I don't know. I guess I don't have a full awareness of that, but I guess it's also a unique thing as well. Like each soul has their unique journey and stuff as well. I really couldn't tell you what the second waivers versus first waivers are going to do that's much different, other than we're all kind of working towards the same thing. So I don't know.
No, I love that, because I think you're right in so many ways. When I started my awakening, and I shared this on the cast before, when my dad passed away in 2005, that getting to talk to a medium and connect with my dad was sort of one of those moments where it was more like, oh wow, there must be something here, right? But it wasn't big. It wasn't like my whole world changed. It was just like a slight tweak. But then in 2018, when I took this job where I'm at now, which is an hour plus commute each way, I had so I subscribed to Audible, and I used that time in the car to listen to books about spirituality. And there was a book called The Light Between Us by Laura Lynn Jackson, who's just a phenomenal, brilliant medium with so much insight, and it was like every word she said just like turned me on in a spiritual way, And then I went to the next book, and then I found Dr. Alexander's book about his near-death experience and it woke me up even more. And then I found his meditation book, his audio book that was guided meditations, and that really blew the top off. So yeah, I can totally see how the first waivers sort of did lay the groundwork for those of us who without those resources, oh my gosh, like I can't even imagine where I'd be right now if I hadn't found those things.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, a lot of us has sort of been in the background just sharing information on Facebook and just doing things. Like we had to do a lot of work on our underbelly to remove a lot of barriers with social. And if you look back through history, there have been light workers and twin flames throughout the world for many, many years. Christ and Mary Magdalene, right? Twin flames. But there's been teachers and leaders and spiritual leaders all along, but there hasn't been a big wave of them until the first waivers. And so that was all predicted and written in the cosmos for it to happen at the time that it did, as predicted in the book of Revelation. So we're just kind of all here ready to take the earth back and yeah. we're freedom fighters, right?
Yeah, we absolutely are. I feel like a lot of it too in terms of progressing in ascension, is really just opening yourself up to the opportunities and possibilities that are out there. Like the universe just I feel like when we try to control things and we try to make things happen and we try to, like, oh, I need to get from here to there. So here are the steps that I'm going to do that. Sometimes it can almost be counterproductive, where if you if you just kind of let go. And, I was having a conversation with someone at work yesterday, and it's like, sometimes we just get in our own heads and we think, I know better, and so I'm going to try to control this. And when we do that, we're essentially saying to the universe, I know better than you know.
Right. You pinch yourself right off from the blessings when you do that, because you're right. You have to be an open book, basically. And that doesn't mean like don't use your I just had a brain cramp. You're gonna have to cut this out. Sorry.
Don't use your that doesn't mean to not use your intuition.
It means use your discernment, but it means to stay open, because and those are, if I'm not a religious person, but I did study a lot of different religions and teachings and beliefs throughout the years, like a lot. And I would just say that would be like Christ said, if the door is not open, Christ can't sup, or love can't live there. So you can't shut your mind and your heart down and have the universe send to you the love that you want. You have to stay open, and you're totally right about that. And that is definitely one of the lessons of love, and one of the steps in ascension, really, to remember to stay open like a child, right?
Yeah, and not to pave your path in such a way that you box yourself in. It's like, I think about it a lot like career. There's some people who are born and they know exactly what they're meant to be. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember. I know people who knew since they were a kid they wanted to be a doctor, and they became a doctor, and their whole life was fulfilled. They did what they wanted to do, and they did it well. And then there are people like me who had no idea what the heck we wanted to be. And so we just sort of followed the next step in the path without thinking too far ahead, and it's kind of fascinating to just, and I'm talking about it from a career perspective, but I sort of feel spiritually it's the same way. If we don't get ourselves locked into such dogmatic things, or maybe we do get locked into dogmatic things, and then when we break free from that, it's like, like, now what? And now you're on that next step path, like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen next, but whatever it is, everything else has worked out so far, so I'm just going to trust the universe more than myself, and go where spirit guides.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key to ascension right there, is to literally just do that every day, because that as you're listening to the soul and it's guiding you every day, it's going to walk you through the levels that you have to go through, and the lessons that you have to learn, and the places that you have to be. And you don't have to think about it or stress out about it or whatever. The people like to try to make things a lot more complicated than it really is. And it doesn't mean that these topics aren't very important and sacred and true and everything else, but it just means that as long as you're following your soul, you'll be walked through whatever you need to go through, and it will all be for the highest good of your soul, if you would but just trust that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's powerful. So Ellen, is there anything else? We've talked a lot about ascension. What did we miss? What didn't we cover?
As far as ascension goes, or as far as spiritual topics, there's so much.
Oh no, I mean, I know, like, we could talk until our earthly lives come to an end about spirituality, and hey, maybe we will.
And we'd be barely tapping into any of it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we'd find out at some point that hey, how much of this actually did we fully grasp? But
right.
But no, in terms of ascension, in terms of just the topic, I know I'm sure it goes far deeper than some of the things you and I have talked about. But is there anything else that our audience should know that's just starting to learn about this topic that we didn't cover off on?
Well, there's a lot still. I mean, I would just say if they're just starting to just really stay in the now moment, being present in the now is the only way to really stay in that open flow, which you need to be in order to be aligned with the source and the spirit, so you can be guided. So staying present in everything that you're doing is really highly important. If you haven't read the Power of Now, get it and read it and understand it, because the presence of the now moment, because at the end of the day, there really is nothing but right now, and time really isn't real. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
Have you heard people say that before? Time isn't real?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it said, and I've heard it articulated a little bit in the quantum physics aspect as well. And even time folding, right?
Time lapses and quantum jumping, where you can jump from one level of quote unquote space and time into a whole nother realm just by doing quantum jumping. So, but what that means as far as time isn't real is that your soul, being that it's eternal, so there's a distance between space and time from where your soul actually literally lives in the higher realms versus the time travel that it takes to get to the earth dimension. And so time not being real, like that's where you'll have a dream and then 2 weeks later it actually happens for you, is because your dream, your soul already told you what was going to happen, and it took 2 weeks for you to travel through space and time for it to actually manifest in the physical realms. You know what I'm saying? But time being not real, it just means that your soul is eternal, and all things are happening simultaneously at the same time, because time isn't real. So it's all about now and the end, the expansiveness of your soul. And if you can just stay in the present moment of everything that you're experiencing along the way, you can live without creating further karma for yourself. So if you stay present with the people that you're communicating with, and you stay in that vibration of love in this moment, and you don't let all the stresses and worries of your bills and tomorrow and yesterday and everything get in the way, then you can be living in in love, in the now of every now, and not be creating karmic problems for yourself and for others.
So is that where karmic problems can come from? That from not being, like if you are thinking about other things or not present, like that.
1,000,000%. People kill themselves in car accidents. They hurt their own children. They violate their spouses. They do everything hurtful and horrible because they're not living in the present moment. So they're allowing themselves and their system to get bogged down by a lot of things that aren't real and aren't necessary, because they think that yesterday still exists and it doesn't. It's gone. And they think that they got to worry about tomorrow, and they don't. The universe already has tomorrow taken care of. And so they get all caught up in yesterday and tomorrow, and they don't live in the present, and then they get overwhelmed, and it causes them to crash their car or run a kid over, or do all kinds of stupid, horrible things that hurt and violate love because they're not staying present. So it's highly important.
Oh man, that is deep. Wow. I you know what, Ellen, I don't even want to talk anymore on this episode, because I want it to end there, because that right there is some awesome wisdom that I'd love for our listeners just to meditate on.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about being present and the importance of being present, but a lot of times it's just, sometimes it seems really philosophical, or it seems,
they're not connecting it to reality of why we're all suffering in humanity. And I'm telling you that is why.
Yeah. So audience, family listening in, just meditate on that. And I want you to think, and I'm going to do the same thing, when I'm not present, it's important to remember that there are impacts, there are potential risks, there's danger. It's not just the best practice. There are real life, real spiritual implications for it.
And physical. Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Imagine running a child over because you were too busy looking at your Facebook phone, or you were turning around to yell at your kid because they were being too loud and it bothered you. You know what I'm saying? Like, really just staying present is so highly important.
Yeah. Wow. very few people leave me speechless or take words away from me or make me sound like a babbling fool like I do right now. So congratulations. Your certificate will be in the mail tomorrow. Yeah. So.
Well, it was my pleasure, and I mean it all with love and light, of course.
Oh yeah, no, it was, and I think everyone should take it with love and light. And so, okay, so as we wrap up here, Ellen, is there anything you would like to plug or promote? Things going on?
Well, I'm still in the stages of just trying to learn how to make my own videos, and I'm very technologically disabled at the time. So I have nothing new really to present other than that I am planning and intending to do a lot more podcasts and a lot more YouTube videos. And I do have on my Facebook page, if you go on there, Ellen Red, there's also an Ellen Red motivational speaker and Ascension guide. So you can go to that page and like it. And I will at some point, hopefully in the very near future, be leaving videos and podcasts on that page as well. And then it will have a link to my YouTube on there as well. So just try to find me on Facebook for now.
Absolutely. And on any of the podcast episodes on the Spirit Woke website that Ellen's on, all of the links to where to find her will be listed. So if you're having a difficult time searching Facebook and finding her, just go to the individual podcast pages that Ellen's on, and you'll find it there. So those of you who are listening on iTunes or on Google Play or wherever you're listening to it, go to the website. All of her contact information will be there. So with that being said, Ellen, I want to thank you again for your time. My, how fast it goes, even though there is no such thing as time.
Correct.
But speaking in the 3D realm, in the third dimension, it has passed. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
And for those listening in, looking forward to our next episode with Ellen. So we will be recording that soon, and it will be live shortly after this one is. So until then, my friends, be well.
Thanks for listening to the Spirit Woke podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website, spiritwoke.com, and connect with the Spirit Woke community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search Spirit Woke. Join us next time for another edition of the Spirit Woke podcast. Namaste.